Good morning. Good morning as the world tube turns. It's your favorite bean eating mofo fresh off the banana boat. Big Lou tapping on in with what it do. Big Lou NFCR2, baby, baby. The first time you're coming to this channel, it'd be highly appreciated if you sub, liked, and shared the channel with your family, folks, friends, gente, comrades, camaradas, buddies, pals, amigos, socios, associates, however you state it. Be highly appreciated. New plugs, new age plug. What's going on? Good morning. Black Hat Music. Salute, sir. Good morning. So, as you can tell from that thumbnail, we got Neal Dellacroce, right? And the reason I put this thumbnail is for one to discuss a individual who had a he's a long-standing uh, individual that possessed much power, right? And you know he believed in a certain code, right, of silence, right? He kept kept it quiet. He was one that done his time, kept quiet. Secondly, the videos I did the other day, loyalty and commitment. He falls right up under both them words at a high tech level. You know what I'm saying? Um, at a time when he could have, you know, I guess you could say rebelled. Not rebelled. Well, I don't know if that's the right word, rebelled, but he could have, when he felt that he was rightfully passed over, he could have caused some rift within his own, uh, his own peoples, and tried to assert his name on as a top. You know what I'm saying? So we'll give a little background about this individual, right? He was born Aniello John Dellacroce on March 15, 1914, New York City, USA. So he probably was born in Manhattan, right? And he died December 2nd, 1985, right? His death was a very important uh, date in history, even though the plot was already going before that. They knew, the individuals at the top knew that he was sick. You know what I mean? They knew he was going to be going out. Stormy Rivers, morning. They knew he was on top. They knew he was going to be going out, and it was a matter of time before they made their move, right? And as it's known already and in the record books and all set in stone, exactly 2 weeks later, right? Exactly 2 weeks later, they made their move on December 16th, 85. Manhattan, that's at a Spark Steakhouse. Everybody knows about that, right? So these are some of the names he's known by: Mr. Neal, Father O'Neill, the tall guy, the Pollock, right? He's got a couple convictions for contempt of court, 1971, tax evasion, 73. I think the tax evasion, I think he was in there a few years, and I believe he got out sometime in 76 or maybe early 77, but he was not there when Carlo Gambino passed. Carlo gave his seat to his cousin, right? Carlo died in 1976. So he got 1 year imprisonment. I think that was in 71, and then 5 years imprisonment, 73. And then he was also indicted in the commission case, but he passed away before it came to court, and Big Paul was killed, right? So, like I said, he was born in New York City to Francesco and Antoinette Dellacroce, first generation immigrants from Italy. He grew up in the Little Italy section of Manhattan. Um, as a teenager, he became a butcher assistant, and work was scarce at the time, so he decided, I'm gonna go into crime. Um, so he worked around, man. That's where he gets his name, Father Aniello, because he used to dress up as a priest when he would commit some of his crimes. And he supposedly, one of his crimes, he allegedly committed a murder dressed as a priest. Uh, Aniello della Croce means in Italian little lamb of the cross. So Della Croce, so in Spanish it's De la Cruz, right? So it's kind of close. He took pleasure in killing people. He likes to peer into a victim's face like some kind of dark angel at the moment of death, according to a federal agent familiar with Della Croce. And it's also said by the old New York cop Ralph Salerno that uh, two guys, when you looked in their eyes, it was scared the shit out of them. Which one was Neal Della Croce, and the other was Carmine Galante. Carmine Galante. Dang, it's early where you live, Lou. It's 6:30 over here right now. Let's see. So he joined the Magano family before it was the Gambinos. It was the Maganos, right? Uh, Vincenzo, Vincent Magano, Vincenzo. I guess I don't know if his real name was Vincenzo or just Vincent, but Magano was the boss that Borgata, which later Albert Anastasia ran it from 50, I believe 51 to 57, and then upon his murder, Carlo Gambino took over. So in the late 30s, Della Croce joined the Magano crime family, and he was involved with Albert Anastasia. After the disappearance of longtime boss Vincent Magano, Anastasia became boss, like I just said, and he promoted Della Croce to capo regime. Due to his square-shaped face, some Gambino members nicknamed him the Polak, a nickname never used within his earshot. So a lot of times you read things, they have things down for people as names, and they're not even real names. Like suppose they called Junior the Snake. Nobody ever called him the Snake to his, especially not to his face. Louis Bagels, they don't. Another guy, he owned a bagel shop. No, but nobody called him that. And he bought that bagel shop way later in his life. Again with this nickname. So I don't. A lot of these nicknames, I don't really believe. Right. Um, Later, it's known that he was the mentor to John J. Gotti, right, aka Senior, and he ran the Raven Night Social Club in Little Italy, which Gotti later took over. Um, so, like I said, in '57, Anastasia's killed, right, and Carlo takes over, and he has his underboss is Joseph Biondo, right, but somewhere in the '60s, he's replaced, and Della Croce is promoted to the underboss position. So the Knapp Commission, which investigated police corruption in a number of industries in the 70s, uh, Dellacroce, where it was involved in after-hour bars that catered to homosexuals in West Village, supposedly. I don't know how true that is either. There's a lot of, goofy ass shit sometimes said. Gluteus Maximus. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It ain't going nowhere. So in 71, he got busted, right? He got busted on contempt charges, contempt of court charges for refusing to answer any questions in the grand jury proceeding for about organized crime, right? So he was he was sent to the pen for that, right? On May 2nd, he was indicted again on tax evasions. Something to do with the labor peace or something like that. He was indicted, like I said, on federal tax and income evasion. He was sentenced to 5 years for that, right? So during that time, when he's locked up for that, Don Carlo passes away in 1976, right? He died of natural causes at home. I think he was like 73 at the time. And everybody expected that, his underboss was going to be, named his successor. You know what I mean? But what happens is before Carlo dies, he appoints his cousin, right? His cousin and brother-in-law, Paul Castallano. So I think what happened there is that I think Carlo Gambino's wife was Paul's sister, right? I think that's how it goes. And I guess they had not I guess, but back then the Sicilians were big on the bloodline, so they try to keep the blood stronger that way, supposedly, by marrying their first cousin. I don't understand that part, but that's what happened in this case, right? So he appointed his cousin slash brother-in-law, like I said, and he wasn't there, at the time. But here's where the loyalty comes in and the commitment for this man, right? When he gets out, he was pretty much the head of the Manhattan Queens faction of the family. You know what I mean? And Big Paul was the overall boss, but he was a Brooklyn guy. Brooklyn was more under him, as so to speak. So it could have been, if Neal wanted to push the issue, he could have tried to take Paul to war for the control of the family, which he didn't do, right? Because he had commitment. He took an oath, he pledged commitment to not Carlo Gambino, right, which he wasn't the boss at the time, not Albert Anastasia, which he wasn't the boss at the time, not Vincent Magano, who was the boss at the time, but he pledged a commitment to Cosa Nostra and Cosa Nostra rules, right? Which that was forbidden, right? You couldn't do that. Try to, cause war, you know what I mean? Over that. From all I've read and heard, Castallano was a businessman and Neal was a street guy, clash of personalities. Yeah, see, that's another thing that I don't believe is true. I don't believe that Big Paul, yeah, when he got older, he inherited a lot of businesses from his father, the butcher business. He had legitimate business that were worth millions of dollars, but Paul was grew up in the streets. He grew up in the streets as well. There's no way you can tell me that he had no street savvy. You know what I mean? Then you hear other stories that he had that he was at the Friends and Veterans Club in Brooklyn, which I believe that ended up being Jimmy Brown's club, social club. That Big Paul was always in there. He was in there at least 4 times a week. Then when he became boss, he kind of stepped back, from being out in the public a lot. You know what I mean? But he had a different vision for the family. He was, for the Borgata, the Gambinos. He was, I think his vision was for them to go legitly, pretty much across the board. You know what I mean? And yeah, Neal was a gangster's gangster. You know what I'm saying? Who never who never divert, never diverted from that. Uh, he was always even though he was a gangster's gangster, he still held loyalty to Cosa Nostra. You know what I'm saying? Remember that quote? The boss is the boss is the boss. You know what I'm saying? He respected Gambino and Gambino's choice of his cousin as the boss. After, once he passed, you know what I mean. He respected that. Like I said, he could have took it to war. You know what I mean. His whoever fell up underneath him and led, followed him and led, him as the lead against Castallano. You know what I mean. And you're talking more evenly than it was with the, the, the Colombo's last war. Um, well, from the stories we hear from like Larry Mazza, them guys, it was like pretty overwhelming. The number, Vic Arena side had a lot of more people, a lot more money, and they were able to buy a lot more uh, powerful weapons, right? And then he said that they had a lot of revolvers and such, and they still came out on top. So this you're talking this here, it would probably be more like I mean, the way it makes it sound from the literature is it would have been like a 15 crew of under Castellano and maybe a 10 man 10 crews up under Dellacroce. You know what I mean? Because remember the Gambinos, they had about 25 captains, so that's 25 crews pretty much. Except for uh, they said DB was a capo without a crew. So where am I? So they met up at I believe it was Nino Gadgi's, from the story that Dominic, what's his name? Dominic Monterano, which is the nephew of Nino Gadgi, told the story that he was told to go up to the second floor, or the third floor, and just sit up there with his rifle. And if he heard anything, and as soon as he seen the Manhattan faction come out of the door, to go ahead and start picking them off, right? Because he was in the military, and he had some sniper training, I believe. So they had that meeting, right, in November 24th, 76. Dellacroce was present. He was in prison at the time, like I said, when Carlo Gambino passed, and it was official that Paul Castellano took over, and Dellacroce was there. I believe from the story that Dominic tells, John Gotti was there. Um, and so after this meeting, it was official. Neal made it clear there that he was on board as um, supporting Paul as the boss, and so he kept Dellacroce in as underboss, um, and he ran traditional activities such as extortion, robbery, loan sharking. So, so it was kind of said that when this happened, that it was kind of split into two factions, two rival factions. I don't know how true that is. Um, but I guess he gets pinched again in '79 with Anthony Plate. I think Anthony Plate was in Florida. At some point, he went to Florida, I believe. But uh, they were arrested for a '74 murder of a New York City bookmaker named Charlie Calisi. The FBI believed Dellacroce had ordered Platt to murder Calisi because he was an informant. While on trial, Plate disappeared. The case ended in a mistrial. Then on February 25th, 85, Dellacroce was indicted along with the leaders of the other families, right? That was the commission trial. And he was indicted again in March the next month, along with his son and 8 others, indicted on the federal racketeering charges regarding the activities of two crews in New York and Long Island. Uh, So they pleaded not guilty to a second set of racketeering charges, and then we all know he passed away in December of that year, right? December 2nd, and then as I was mentioning earlier, they already had the plot going, right? They already had the plot going. I'm not sure exactly how long already it was in play, but some of the key players in that was, as we know, John Gotti Sr., Sammy the Bull, Frankie the Chico wasn't hands-on, but he was aware of what was going on. He was inside the restaurant waiting for Paul to show up, along with Jimmy Brown Fiala was inside. And I believe Joe Gallo was inside. Danny Marino was inside, waiting for Paul to arrive with Tommy Bellotti. Tommy Bellotti was the newly appointed number 2 man under Paul, because remember, Dellacroce just passed away, right? So it was a big mistake on their part, though, them being both together, them getting taken out together. And now, at least if Paul would have got taken out, then Bellotti would have been around. He still could have, elevated himself to boss and then ran the family, right? But fortunately for them, that's not how it worked out, So so Dellacroce passed the cancer, right? 71 years old. So as we know, like I just mentioned, he elevated Bellotti. I believe so. Bellotti must have been a captain, and then he elevated him to underboss. I doubt he was a soldier at the time, and then went straight to underboss. And then Castallano, I forgot to mention, he didn't even show up. He didn't show up for Dellacroce's wake or funeral or any of that. So that angered Gotti, probably, I would think to put the plan in motion quicker, right? Because like I said, exactly 2 weeks later they killed him. What's up, Rasta Foo? And then also remember at the time, Neal Dellacroce was pivotal in this because he was Paul was relentless. He wanted those tapes from Angelo Ruggiero's house that was bugged, his daughter's phone, where he took over. His brother Sal had died in a plane crash or a helicopter crash, him and his wife, and this is Angelo's brother, and he had a big time operation going on with Bobania, right? So he took over his brother's operations. So allegedly it was him and Gene Gotti and John Caniglia and a couple other guys. And so his house is bugged, his telephone's tapped, and the feds are getting all these, tons of recorded conversations, right? I didn't know Dellacroce was died in the commission case. Yeah, he wasn't died in the commission case. So out of the Colombos, Persico was indicted, and then his underboss Jerry Lang, who was acting boss at the time, Gambino Castallano and Dellacroce were indicted, 1 and 2 man from that family, and then the Lucchese's, the whole administration was indicted. The boss, underboss, and consigliere. I know I don't pronounce that name right because I know that I think the G is silent, but I can't seem to pronounce it right. I keep wanting to say it like it's in Spanish. So they indicted all of them, and then on top of that, 2 soldiers were indicted: Ralph Scopo from the Colombos and Anthony Bruno and Delicato from the Bananos were indicted. Right? They weren't part of the administration. They weren't captains at the time. So, yeah, Dellacroce definitely was indicted. So back to the thing about the tapes, right? It was taboo for people to sell Bobania, right, or drugs, period. You know, a lot of guys did it, you know, because they got away with it. You know what I'm saying? But if you got caught, you know what I mean? The boss will definitely take that big old envelope from you every month or however you decide to pay him. If it's weekly, monthly, you know. But you know, he don't want no part of drugs, right? Castallano was big on that. Uh, so he wanted to hear all the tapes, and also on those tapes, you know, what's Dellacroce was. I mean, excuse me, Rogerio was bad mouthing him, the boss, and talking about different people. I imagine he was talking about probably a lot of people, but he definitely was talking about the boss. He wasn't turning over the tapes. Neal Dellacroce was like that middle, that liaison between Paul and Angelo and John Gotti's crew, right? The Bergen Hunt and Fish crew, or the Bergen Fish and Hunt. No, it was Bergen Fish. It was Bergen Hunt and Fish Club, right? That was the social club. And Rogerio was up under John J. Gotti, aka Senior, right? And you know, he kept telling, you know, Angelo that, hey, you know, Paul wants the tapes, Paul wants the tapes, you know, and then Paul, whatever Neal was telling Paul back, you know, why he wasn't getting him the tapes, but this went on for a while. This went on for a while, and it got to the point where he was demanding these tapes. He wanted to see these tapes. He wanted to listen to these tapes. Now I don't know if he was telling them just straight up, because I know he wasn't telling them no. Well, what kind of excuses was he giving them? Because you know, in the movie, that movie Gotti '96 HBO movie, you know, the guy, I think it was Vincent Pastore was playing Angelo, and he was like, "Oh, there's a lot of friends on them tapes. I won't give those tapes up." And I think he's even caught on wiretap somewhere too, where he says, "I can't. I just can't. I got too many friends on there or something." Um, so the tapes never came about. And then when you know, after Neal died, then they were like, "Oh, he's the one that's been keeping us, you know, alive." I would say, you know what I'm saying? And so they knew that they had to make a move, because the way it was, the rumors had it was that they were gonna probably, maybe perhaps kill some of these guys, but probably not actually kill them because of the heat from the commission case, but definitely demote John J. Gotti, aka Senior, demote him from Capo Regime and throw him with another captain, and then split up the crew, the crew that was formerly under him, right? And split them all up and send them to different captains, under different captains, and break that up. So they were aware of that. So they were like, you know, we got to make the first move now. Neal's gone. There's nobody keeping us insulated, protected from this happening. So, like I said, Neal died 2 weeks before he was killed. So, you know, the funeral probably was, he died on December 2nd of 85. His funeral probably was sometime, what, I don't know, probably something like the 9th, 10th, 11th, something like that, 12th of December, probably less than a week before Paul was killed. And then he don't show up for any of those events, right? The wake, the funeral, nothing, you know. So that even ticked off John Senior even more about the guy. He didn't really like him because, like, I think it was Black Hat Music says earlier in the live stream, that he always read that Paul was a businessman and not a gangster, he was more of a racketeer, not a, you know, not a guy, I guess you would say that, well, you know what I mean, capable guy, right? But I don't believe that. I believe that he was a gangster as well. He just, when he got older and started getting more established legitly, he kind of, you know, he went a different route. He had a different vision for the family, right? But you know, he doesn't go to none of these. Like I said, his wake, his funeral. So Gotti and the boys, you know, Chico and Sammy the Bull, and I'm not sure if Piney Armani was involved at all, but it was most of the guys, Anthony Rapino, Skinny Dom. I think I think Joe Watts was a backup shooter. Eddie Leno was a shooter. I think Bobby Borriello. Yeah, so it was mostly more the guys from the Bergen Hunt and Fish Club that was involved with that, involved in that plot, right? The actual guys are on the street. What's he say? Big Lou, not to change the subject, but I have tickets to the Texas Longhorns versus Oklahoma State football game tomorrow in Stillwater, Oklahoma. 10-yard line, 11th row on the Texas side. Hook 'em horns. Wow, I thought you lived in Arizona. Man, you travel from games or you're out that way? I thought it was just the bosses. No, okay. No, they indicted like I said, they indicted Paul Castallano, Neal Dellacroce, Carmine Persico, Jerry Lang, Ralph Scopel, uh, Tony Ducks, Tom Mick Santoro, Christy Tick Fernari, Fat Tony, Bruno Delicato. That's 10 guys right there in the commission case. And then they I believe they arrested or they indicted Rusty Restelli from the Bananos, but later it was dropped on them because they figured out that the Bananos weren't even on the commission no more at that time because of the Donnie Brasco fiasco and I think the French Connection or the French Connection case. So they lost their seat. And they weren't involved with receiving any money from the concrete. And that's when during this time Rusty was boss, but then eventually he became ill and then passed, and then Messina was locked up. But when he got out, he took over the family, and then that's when they started doing a lot of drug dealing and things like that to make money to build their family back up. And they were able to do so because they were not so much having FBI scrutiny, right? Because they weren't involved with nothing, they kind of eased back on surveilling them. You know what I mean? Once they found out that they weren't, it was confirmed from the wiretaps and such and the bugs that the Bananos were not part of the commission. So they weren't making none of the money. Because remember, the Concrete Club was the Colombos, Gambinos, Genovese, and Lucchese's, and it would go into everybody would get a certain little percentage once it was said and done, right? No, I grew up in Tucson, but I live in Oklahoma now. I'm a misplaced Texan. Went to Texas Arlington night school for my degree when I lived in Dallas. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. Now that you say that, I remember that. About you being from Texas. So again, when it came to Dellacroce, man, he kept his mouth shut. You know what I mean? He kept his mouth closed. He did a couple little jolts, one little contempt charge. He did a year, and the other time he got 5 years. But in no time, he was a stickler for the rules of Cosa Nostra, right? He was big on obviously omerta, right? But being loyal to your Borgata, being loyal to your boss, and holding that commitment to Cosa Nostra as an entity, right? Because even though the boss or the underboss runs the ceremony, sometimes it might be the consigliere, maybe it's the captain, but for the most part, from my understanding, it's always somebody from the administration that actually will oversee it. Maybe a captain will run their ceremony because maybe he speaks better or something. I don't know, but the the oath you take is the same. You know, I don't care if you get put on from, you know, from New Jersey or Philadelphia or Chicago or New York. It's pretty much the same. You know, you read back the same when you take that oath. You read back the same. You know, the same. How would I say that? You know, when they're going down like the rules as far as don't betray your friends. If you do, you'll burn like the saint in your hand, right? That you're cupping that saint back and forth in your hand. You know why? Because you're not trying to get burnt. You're trying to, you know, you have to go through the. It's symbolic, right? It's symbolic, the ceremony, but those ceremonies are the same pretty much. You know, it's not probably not word for word exactly the same, but the gist of things is the same. You know, don't betray your friends. You know, things such as that. You know, it's a secret society. You know what I mean? Don't be speaking freely about it. You know, things like that, right? So when you take your oath, you're not necessarily taking it to that person that's uh, running the ceremony. You know, if that's the boss, you know what I mean. But you're pledging your allegiance to the Cosa Nostra itself, as the, like I said, as the entity. You know what I'm saying? So that's where your commitment lies. That's where your you know your that's where your whole the commitment as a whole lies with Cosa Nostra, right? Not again, not with the Borgata you're with. The Borgata you're with, you do pledge, you know, loyalty. You do pledge, you know, omerta. As far as you know, you're not going to go to a friend from another family and tell them the business of that family, of your family. You know what I mean? You're not going to go talk about another family publicly, you know, and tell their business. You're going to keep quiet about anything that you know, right? So that's where the commitment, you know, that's where the commitment, a strong commitment, you know, he would have, even if he would have got convicted in that commission case, you know, he would have got 100 years like everybody else. I don't, he still wouldn't have opened his mouth and said nothing. You know what I mean? He wouldn't have said nothing. You know, he would have kept quiet like he did. Just like most all of them did. Well, yeah, I think everybody did in that case. Nobody defected and gave and cooperated in that case. No, not that I can think of. You know what I mean? Not that I can think of. So, you know, he just not only, like I said, not only would this man take his time, keep his mouth shut. You know, he could have you know, he could have caused not caused, but he could have kicked off a war within the family, the Gambino family. You know what I mean? And he could have been pushing the issue that he deserves and should be the boss. That Gambino had no right to pass him, you know, and promote his cousin. You know what I mean? And he didn't do that because what did he say? The boss is the boss is the boss. You don't know Cosa Nostra. The boss is the boss is the boss. And who was he saying that to at that time? I believe it was Angelo Rosario. You know what I mean? Um, and another thing, he showed a lot of loyalty and commitment to Gotti and them. You know, because I'm pretty sure they had brought it up to them they brought it up to Neal that they wanted to do that, right? John Cabrera. What's up, John Cabrera? Thanks for subbing, bro. Thanks for stopping by. I think you were in either Vegas Prison Stories live last night or Big Weebies. Worked all day, school, music all night. Wow. Yeah, I'm like 6 or 7 subs away from 300 subs. It's a grind, but Big Lou's here for the long haul. You feel me? Um, so yeah, like I was saying, so Gotti and these guys were probably talking to Neal and you know, here and there about wanting to get rid of dude Big Paul and something, you know, and he kept it to himself as well. You know, he could have went back to Paul and said, hey, these guys are plotting, you know, plotting to take you out. You know what I mean? And his word would have been gold with Big Paul because he's his long time underboss prior to, I think he was the underboss like 10 years, 11 years before Carlo died and Big Paul took over. And then he was underboss another 10 years after that. He had like a 20-year service at underboss. I think 65 to 85, something like that. So long time underboss. You know what I mean? So he's just one of many examples of somebody that takes it on the chin, their time. You know, it wasn't long stretches, but still, you know, guys flip for less than that, right? Nowadays, you know, but he took his time on the chin. He did, you know, he took a few indictments. You know, he had to fight some of them, got him, you know, he beat a few of them, but he would have went down with the rest of them in the commission case. He would have got 100 years just like everybody else. But unfortunately for him, well, maybe not unfortunately, maybe fortunately for him, he passed. You know what I mean? Oh, maybe, you know, it had been, I guess, you know, being at that age, 70, 71, being sick and then cancer and all that, you know, probably wasn't, you know, good. Prison wouldn't, or MDC probably wouldn't have been a good place to be sitting at. You know what I mean? Yes, sir. Much less to flip these days. Oh yeah, absolutely. And then you know, and then he stood in his lane. He was away. Like I said, he was away when Carlo died. Carlo appointed his cousin. He was away, so he wasn't there to contest that. But when he got out, he could have helped. You know, he could have wanted some vengeance on that, and you know, and took the family into war. You know what I'm saying? And he would have had a lot of people backing him because a lot of people felt that he should have been boss. You know what I'm saying? But then again, who knows? Because some guys are not. Some guys are like, you know, maybe some guys are not cut out for that level. Maybe they're a good underboss. You know, kind of like in football, where you know they're a good offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, but then when they get a job as a head coach, you know, they can't make nothing happen. You know, so I kind of think that for in this sense too. Sometimes not this actual person Dellacroce, but I'm just saying there's probably some guys that are good underbosses, but as as the main boss, you know, their leadership, you know, ain't up to par. You know what I mean? You could probably say that for, you know, different guys. You know, like a Moose, not a Moose, but a Castle probably was better as a aide de camp for, you know, Christy Tick, right, or something like that. You know, than an underboss. You know what I mean? Um, you know, some guys are probably better soldiers than, you know, being a capo because, you know, once they got promoted to capo, the crew, he couldn't make no money and, you know, give decent envelopes to the boss. You know what I'm saying? It just I guess it varies with everybody. You know what I mean? But you know, like I said, Neal Dellacroce was just one. I decided to do, you know, use him as an example for this video to go with the words commitment and loyalty because you know he just said I'll continue being an underboss. I'll respect Carlos' wishes, and Big Paul, you're my boss. You're the boss of this brigada. I'll fall in line where I'm, you know, number two man, you know, and let's make money. You know what I mean? His situation was different, you know, but there's been other guys over the years. There's many guys in there now that are old men. I mean, old men, late 80s with dementia, don't know who they are, you know, have to wear a diaper. You know, they shouldn't even be in there. You know, they should be at home, let them die at home, you know, with their family. You know, these, like, and I'm speaking of Little Vic Arena, you know, why have the taxpayers pay for a nurse? You know, I don't know if he's 24 hours, but it's, you know, it's pretty close because he don't even know who he is. You know, he's got dementia. I'm pretty sure he's so gone now. He's Alzheimer's, right? He's got to be probably fed, spoon fed, and things like that. So why not let him go home? Let the family take care of him. You know, I don't understand that. Then Balby Mana in his 90s, you know, on a conspiracy, nothing even happened to the guy that he was conspiring to kill. You know what I mean? And he's been down for what 30 I think he's been down since 88, I believe. What is it, 34 years? He's been down 34 years. He's like 91 years old. He should come home, man. There's a lot of guys in there, that are old men. Vic Camuso's in like 84, 85 now. You know what I mean? He kept his mug quiet, didn't say shit. Frankie Loke, another one, died last year, a year before, like 89 years old. Never opened his mouth about nobody. Nicky Scarfo passed away, 2019, I think it was. Kept his mouth shut, man. The list goes on and on. Alley Boy Persico. The only thing he did was he allocuted, though. I don't understand what was the purpose of allocuting in court, admitting that he was the acting boss or whatever he allegedly admitted to. You know what I mean? You got life sentence anyways. What did you? Well, you know what? I take that back. I think he allocated in the case before he caught that life sentence for the conspiracy of Wild Bill. I think he took a deal in that pistol case because he was on a little boat in Florida, in the water in Florida, and I guess it was the Coast Guard came up on the boat and they found a pistol on the boat on board, and then he allegedly was arrested and ex felon in possession of firearm. So he might have allocated during that case. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, you're allocating, you're admitting to something that is supposed to be secretive. You know what I mean? So you're supposed to, pledge your commitment, pledge your loyalty to not talk about it publicly, right? Or really at all, because once something's, etched in stone, you know what I mean? Yeah, it just depends on that, right? But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and close out on this episode of Stand Up, 10 Toes Down, take it on the chin and do your time, right? Not everyone wants to be in the spotlight. Well, yeah, you shouldn't want to be in the spotlight if you're part of a secret society. You know what I mean? You know, you're supposed to be, laid back, kick back. You know what I mean? Be as flashy, less flashy as, how would I say that? Um, being least flashy as possible. Um, it's just I, I I don't know. I guess it was some part of the dress, the way he dressed. He caught a lot of attention. You know what I mean? Gotti Senior. But and that was another thing too, because I've heard Dominic say this, that, and I don't know how true this is because I don't really know about. I can't tell you all the couples from that crew or from that Borgata, that family, right? But he said something about, Italians wouldn't be promoted past soldier, so that you had to be Sicilian in the Gambino family to be of Sicilian descent to become a captain, capo regime. You know what I mean? Which that's how that even be true. Gotti wasn't even made yet, actual made member yet, and he was acting captain for Carmine Fatico, right? Charlie Wagons. He was the original owner of the Bergen Hunt and Fish Crew, and it was in Brooklyn. And then he relocated to Queens or Manhattan, I believe. Manhattan, I think it was at. And then Gotti, like I said, it was acting captain. And then he became captain of that crew. And after it moved to Manhattan, you know what I mean? Uh, so he was Italian. Neal Dellacroce was Italian as the underboss. You know what I mean? Because I heard a story recently that Jimmy Brown told John Gotti after Paul was killed that, hey, us Sicilians got to stick together. Something about Napoli Dons or something like that. Cats from people from Naples. And then Gotti didn't say nothing, but then later he came to his club and told him, "Let me talk to you." He goes, "I'm Napoli Don." And I guess Jimmy Brown Fiala was like, "Oh shit," you know what I mean? Because he just went ahead and assumed that Gotti was a Sicilian. So it's a trip that even at that level, being from Calabrese or Naples, you know what I mean? It's to have that riff, that little, I don't know what you want to call it, a riff, or just that little deep down animosity for a Sicilian, or a Sicilian for a Calabrese or a Napolitan. It's a trip. You know what I mean? It's a trip. But I got an appointment here at 7:30, so I'm gonna go get me a breakfast and then go to my appointment, and then I got something scheduled. I got a couple more shows scheduled for today. Uh, and it'd be appreciated if you guys came back for those shows when they come on. As you can see the thumbnails, one's I'm continuing my series on war heroes, American heroes. Uh, Doing the 65th Infantry, no 65th Regiment Infantry at Borinquiers. Um, the baby. Anyways, yeah, so I appreciate everybody stopping in. Uh, and I'll see you guys a little later. That being said, it's your favorite bean eating mofo fresh off the banana boat, Big Lou. Thanks, peoples.